Welcome everybody to this live stream question and answer session about Choral and Organ Awards at Oxford, which is part of the virtual Open Days. And I'd just like to introduce the people you can see on your screen. I'm Owen Rees, I'm the Director of Music at Queen's, and I'm coordinator of the Choral Awards for Oxford. And we have two other Directors of Chapel Music with us on this session, Will Dawes, who is Director of Music at Somerville College, and Mark Williams, who's Director of Music, or indeed Informator Choristarum at Magdalen College. And we have a number of current choral scholars and organ scholars here to help answer all your questions. So among the choral scholars, we have Sarah Chapman from University College, and she's reading chemistry. Milo Hodgkiss, who's at Magdalen and reading classics. Charlotte Jeffries, who's reading music and is at Queen's. Chris O'Leary, also reading music, who's at Christ Church. And Gemma Roper, who's studying PPE, and she's at St. Peter's College. And then we have two organ scholars with us, Melissa Chang, also reading music, she's at Somerville, and Lawrence John, another music student who's at Queen's College. One or two things to note before we get going with your questions. The Choral Awards application form is now online, and the normal deadline for submitting that online applies. So it's 1st of September, please. The auditions for Choral Awards will be done online this year, and full details of how that process will work are up on the Choral Awards pages of the University Admissions web pages. If you spot somebody else asking a question on the Slido that you think that's very similar to my question, I'd really like that to be answered, you can like that question and that moves it up the list. If you've got a question that's really specific to a single college, we'll try to answer it if that college is represented here, but you'll probably get a fuller answer by contacting the Director of Music, or if there's no Director of Music, the organ scholar at that college. And if you go to the Choral and Organ Awards webpage for the university, in the right-hand column of that page, you'll see a PDF document that gives you information about all the colleges that take part in the Choral Awards and Organ Awards schemes. So we'd like to get going with the questions and answers. Do please keep them coming, and we'll flip between Choral Awards and Organ Awards throughout this session. So beginning with a Choral Awards question, if you're successful in your Choral Awards application, Choral Scholarship application, does this mean that you'll be offered a place at Oxford regardless of your academic application? So I'll just deal with that one because it's an important part of the procedures and how the Choral Awards work. The answer is that the result of the Choral Award audition in September is that we'll tell you whether you're under consideration for a Choral Award at your first choice college, or in some cases that you're no longer under consideration there, but we recommend another college that is happy to consider you for a Choral Award, or in some cases, we're very sorry, you're below Choral Award standard. But then you simply apply for an academic place at Oxford through the UCAS form, and that's an independent process. So being under consideration for a Choral Award as a result of the September auditions does not guarantee you an academic place at Oxford. You still need to do the academic application alongside all other applicants to Oxford and go through that process for your subject. We also had a question recently about the audition pieces, and lots of people have been asking about those. Can you submit more than one piece if it adds up to 5 minutes? And if those of you are not aware of this advice, we ask you to keep your audition piece to 5 minutes or less. And this year, the audition piece will be submitted as a video recording, please, by the 21st of September. So would one of the other directors of music like to answer on advice about people coming with more than one shorter piece as their audition piece?
I think that would be fine, preferably just one piece that shows you off to the best of your ability. But if you have a 2-minute piece and another 2-minute piece, then do feel free to send that in on the recording. The live part of the audition that will happen, you'll have to sing a folk song as well this year. So it's possible that you may think that I'll send in a more lively piece as part of my recorded audition and then sing the folk song in a more sort of languid style in the live audition later.
Thank you, Will. Another core question just come in. Is there any site that we can use which has all the different colleges' numbers of weekly services? There isn't a single chart of that, is the answer, but if you go to the Choral Awards page for Oxford, just type in Oxford Choral Awards, and that's the first hit. And then look on the right-hand side of that page, you'll see that PDF that I mentioned a moment ago, which gives one page of information about each college. And for, I think, almost all of those colleges have there made clear how many weekly services there are. The numbers of services vary between almost every day of the week in term time at the three choral foundations, and down to just Sunday evenings in the case of a number of the choirs that offer choral awards. So let's move across to the organ awards questions. And Mark, I don't know whether you want to choose one or whether I will plot one out.
There are some here, yes. There's one person asks whether there's a specific part of the audition that will be more important than another. For example, the prepared piece, the sight reading, the transposition and harmonizing, etc. The answer to that will depend a little bit on how much value the director of music that you're playing to places on those things. So in a place where you would have to be perhaps playing 6 or 7 services a week, or where you'd be sharing your part in that, it would certainly be the case that sight reading would be valued quite highly, as would, you know, things like transposition and harmonization, because you'd have quite a challenging workload. In other places which have a smaller workload, it might, the director of music may feel that sight reading isn't as important. If they feel that you're an accomplished player, and that you would have time to prepare between maybe 1 or 2 services a week, then that will be valued less highly. So it depends a little bit on where you're applying to.
Thank you, Mark. We've had a question come in on choral awards relating to the current situation. Do you have any advice for choral experience this summer, given the current circumstances? So again, Will, would you like to kick off with that one?
It's a tricky question, really. In a way, we're not looking for anything different than we have been for the last few years. It's just the process of how we're going to hear you and how we're going to meet you that's going to change. If you've got a nice voice, or you can sight a little bit, or you've got a good ear, then it's worth applying. As Mark was hinting at there with the organ awards, it's similar for the choral awards. If you think you're a very strong sight reader, then maybe somewhere with a higher workload might be appropriate. If, however, like many people who audition, you feel your sight reading is not as strong as you would like it to be, but want to improve that level, then go for a college which only has 1 or 2 services per week, and then you'll have the time to sort of develop those skills during your scholarship. But in terms of the actual choral experience, I'm not sure if that's different. Others might have a different opinion.
Well, perhaps we could ask any of the current choral scholars if they found that any of the preparation they did was particularly useful when it came either to the choral award auditions or to their life and work as a choral scholar. Anybody want to chip in?
So before I applied to audition, I did a few services on the back row at a cathedral in Glasgow, where I'm from, just because I knew that quite a large part at Christchurch particularly are the daily psalms, and that was something that I had no experience of previously in terms of singing that in a choral scenario. So that was just really to get some preparation, even just the sight reading, and obviously the pointing, you know, how they're sung varies from college to college, but having sort of a base understanding, and also just having the experience of what a service of evensong is like, and to be able to do that semi-regularly. I realize doing that now under the current circumstances is obviously different. I know certain institutions are, you know, having people record things in isolation and then piece them together. So if you're able to do that just to get the sense of how recording those pieces might feel, then that could be useful. But that was something that I found particularly useful when I came to apply in first year.
Thanks, Chris. Just to answer quickly one very specific question about this year's choral award audition process. The question is, will we get a chance to prepare the folk song? The answer is yes. We'll be publishing the list of prescribed folk songs for you to choose one from within the next couple of weeks. So you'll have the summer to prepare that folk song for the online audition. Somebody asks, do most successful choral awards applicants have roughly at least grade 8 standards in their singing? I'd like to kick off there by saying, in my experience, that the qualifications of singers and the experience of those applying for choral awards and being successful in getting one is extremely wide. So we have people who've done lots of choral singing, some who've done very little, some who've done a lot of service singing, some who've done none or very little, and plenty of applicants who have not taken grade exams as singers, even if perhaps they're taking grades on their instrument. Mark, do you have any more thoughts on that question?
No, I don't. I think what you say is true. The most important thing when considering applying for a choral award is that if you love singing and you're good at it, and then go for it. There's absolutely nothing ventured, nothing gained. Remember, the very important thing to remember in the choral awards is that this is not your main application to university. This is purely assessing your singing. If you get an email at the end of it that says, sorry, you didn't meet the standard that we're looking for, it's not time wasted. I mean, especially this year when it's just going to be an audition online and you don't have to come to Oxford for 2 days, it's worth going for it.
I'd like to throw the next question to some of the current choral scholars or organ scholars. It's a question about choral scholarships, but would apply to both. It reads, for the students, how intense are the scholarships? And the example this person gives is it feasible for medics with more contact hours to do the scholarships, even with fewer services a week? So let's just go around, get a couple of replies to that. Charlotte, do you want to kick off on that one?
Well, so the intensity is obviously very varied between college to college. You've got the 7 services a week to 1 service a week, as we've already said. But very much the choral scholarship, certainly at Queen's, is balanceable with other things, whether academic or other extracurricular activities. We have at least one medic in the choir currently, and she manages amazingly. So yeah, definitely it's very, very possible and manageable.
Thank you, Charlotte. So Sarah, do you want to say something about the experience of holding a choral scholarship and reading chemistry at the same time?
Yeah, so chemistry is type of subject. So I have 30 plus hours of contact hours a week, so obviously quite a lot. And Univ is one of the colleges that only has 1 service a week, and I found that it's really manageable. I managed to, in my first year, do my degree, sing in the choir, and still swim. And so as long as you balance your time, it's okay.
And Gemma, how is it reading PPE and having a choral scholarship?
So at Peters, we have 2 services a week, one on a Thursday and one on a Sunday night. And I've found it really fine to balance. I've done all 3 years now, so even all the way through, I found it fine. And in second year, I was president of the JCR at Peters as well. And I still could go to all the services and everything. So I found it was fine to balance.
And we've got another subject represented. Milo, do you want to say something about classics? 4-year course, of course. And we've had some questions about whether choral awards are held for all the period of your degree course. So do you want to say anything else in addition to what others have mentioned?
Just sort of to echo what people have said, I'm at Magdalen, and so we do, should know, I think it's 6, might be 7 services a week. So obviously it's quite a lot, but what I would say is, well, I did a gap year singing at Cathedral, which I think helped me a lot. But even if I hadn't, I think like a few weeks into the first term, you sort of get used to what doing even songs is like, and it takes up less time just preparing things. And I'd say you get used to it more quickly than you think, and you also have more time than you might expect if you know things start to take less time. So yeah.
So, Mark, should we turn to organ questions again?
Yes, there are a couple of relatively straightforward, simple, practical questions here. One is, if a student was unsuccessful for an organ award, would they be able to modify their personal statement to be less music related for the standard application? Yes, I think that is possible. Because the organ award process happens before the main UCAS deadline, it is possible to put in your application to Oxford if you wish, and if you are unsuccessful, you can then apply to other universities, etc., or indeed to Oxford, to a different college for a different subject or whatever, afterwards in time for the middle of October deadline. So that's absolutely fine. And then another very simple practical question: can we use an electronic organ for the audition? Yes, absolutely. We absolutely understand that lockdown will have restricted people's ability to practice, to get to instruments. So any instrument that you can have access to would be great for the audition.
Thank you. Interesting choral question. How will the choral scholars be trained? Will there be master classes, etc.? So one thing to say straight away is that choral scholars receive singing lessons organised by their college. And in some cases, there's a small team of teachers or one teacher who's teaching all of the choral scholars at a particular college. So that's one great opportunity to really develop your voice during the 3 or 4 years of your undergraduate career. Should we go around some of the choral scholars again, and for you to mention anything about other things that have contributed to your training or experience as a singer, perhaps outside your chapel choirs during your time so far at Oxford? Who would like to kick off with that? Charlotte, yeah.
So I've done a small amount of leading rehearsals, conducting, that kind of thing, especially at school, and that really helped me to understand what a rehearsal was and to understand all of the parts and everything like that, and that's helped me considerably, especially when watching a conductor. So for me, that was really helpful. I don't know if anybody else has had a similar experience or wants to add something completely different.
Has anybody taken part in any vocal masterclasses while you've been at Oxford so far? Sorry, Chris, answer whatever you were going to say.
So I was just going to add, so I directed the college choir, which is the unauditioned choir at Christchurch, in my second year. And I'd agree that I found that really helpful as a sort of indirect way to training if you have the opportunity to do some choral conducting. If that's what you're interested in when you're at university, then I found that explaining it, you know, how it's done, or trying to lead a service, even if it's just once a week as it is for the Christchurch College Choir, can be really useful in understanding how it works when you take it to you yourself being in the choir, in the services that you're participating in as part of your award.
Thank you. Should we turn to the organ scholarships again? Mark, I don't know if there are any that would be the kinds of questions that would be useful to hear from Lawrence and Melissa.
There is one that's come in that says, for organ scholars, how much experience did they have playing the organ when they applied? So the answer to that is it varies hugely. Some people have started a year or two ago. Some people have been playing the organ since they were in nappies. And it might be helpful, maybe if Melissa, you told us a bit about what your organ playing experience had been before you made your application.
Sure. So I started playing the piano when I was 5, and then I took up the organ when I was 13 at school. And then I basically tried to play as much for the school services that I had as possible. If you don't have that school, then maybe look at your local church if there's any like opportunity available to play in a public space, just to practice performance in public. And then, yeah, I think the main things I did was just trying to become like a part of choir at school. I thought that was really helpful, again, with the whole understanding how a choir works, because it's not just about organ playing, but also working as part of a choir. That's my experience.
Lawrence, what was your experience?
So just to add to what Melissa said, before I came to Oxford, I was the organ scholar at a cathedral for my gap year, and that was really helpful. You know, just for getting a sense of the sort of repertoire different choirs do, and, you know, learning a lot of accompaniments and voluntaries and useful things like that. And actually, therefore, I found somewhere like Queen's where we're doing 3 services a week, which I think is manageable, you know, alongside what you're doing with a degree. It's not, you know, it's not a massive workload. It's not a very little workload, but actually having the sort of grounding in, you know, repertoire and accompaniments before coming up to Oxford was really helpful, for feeling that I had a handle on the organ scholarship, as well as being able to do my degree as well. So I'd highly recommend that to anyone who's thinking of taking a gap year and doing an organ scholarship.
So on the choral side, if I had a question, what have you found most rewarding about being a choral scholar? Shall we just sort of zip around the current choral scholars and think of one thing that you found particularly rewarding about holding a scholarship? So in no particular order, Milo?
One thing I would say about singing a university choir that I found really rewarding is there's sort of a sense of responsibility, and in my choir there's not too many singers, and it feels like you actually matter, and what you do makes a difference to people. And when people say after a service, I really enjoyed that, or I found that moving, or something like that, I think that's quite cool for me to be a part of the thing that makes people feel like that.
Thank you. Gemma?
I think for me, perhaps working with some of the musicians and directors of music that I've got to work with. At Peters, we've been really lucky. We had Jeremy Summerly, and then this year we've had Edward Higginbottom. So it's been amazing to get to work with these conductors and learn so much from them.
Charlotte?
So at Queen's, we don't only do evensongs, but we also work towards larger scale concerts, and that's been really rewarding to work. So we did the Handel's Messiah in Michaelmas Term and Monteverdi Vespers, notably in Hilary Term, and we worked with ensembles such as the Academy of Ancient Music and Instruments of Time and Truth, and working with those ensembles was really special and something you wouldn't get to do outside of a scholarship.
Thanks. Sarah, anything you want to add?
I think UNIV has a small select congregation that attends every week, and being able to, we often get told at the end of services that we've been the highlight of their week. And like Milo was saying, that feeling that you've really made a difference to someone's week is really rewarding.
Thank you. And Chris, anything to add?
Well, I definitely agree with what's been said about the sort of team of people you get to work with. It's quite extraordinary when you feel that you get to a certain standard and you're producing a certain sound. But for the sake of variety, I'll also say that the repertoire is something which was previously unknown to me, and discovering just such a huge variety of incredible music, both sacred and secular, for the services or for the various engagements that the cathedral choir does, has been really rewarding and challenging in various ways. And it's something that I probably wouldn't have discovered otherwise, I think.
I'll just answer briefly, if I may, a couple of the other questions have come in on the Choral Awards. Somebody asks, how many hours do you rehearse a week? So the typical pattern in the Oxford choirs is that there's a rehearsal of anywhere between about an hour and a quarter and half an hour immediately before the choral service. And then it's quite often the case also that choirs will have perhaps a lunchtime rehearsal or an evening rehearsal on a night when they're not singing evensong. The hours vary quite a lot if you total them up over the week, but if you go to the document, the PDF that's on the right-hand side of the Choral and Organ Awards page for Oxford admissions, you'll see the details for each college, and they set out the rough weekly timetable for each choir there. Another person asks, are there any opportunities to dep in local churches at colleges with fewer services a week? Absolutely. And one good depping opportunity is that the Oxford choirs, some of them sing on Sunday morning, but many of them don't. So there's an opportunity there to sing in other institutions, such as Pusey House, for example, chapel on Sundays. And a final very specific question, does singing or voice count as an instrument related to the instrumental awards? I think it's true that at most colleges which offer an instrumental award, which is a college by college scheme, not a central university one, they would count solo singing as an instrument for those purposes, so that you could apply for an instrumental award. But worth checking with the college that you're considering for your first choice. Okay, should we go back to organ awards questions then, Mark?
Yes, so again, a couple of questions that relating to what organ scholars can read apart from music, the answer is there is a page on the Organ Awards website which lists all the subjects that you can do with an organ scholarship at various colleges. There are some colleges where that is limited to music, not very many, but at most subjects are manageable. I think somebody here is asking about whether you could do engineering and have an organ scholarship. The answer to that is almost certainly yes, but you would need to think carefully about the level of commitment that the organ scholarship would require of you and the amount of time you would be expected to dedicate to your degree. It would be fair to say that probably students in art subjects dominate the organ world a little bit more than in science subjects. That's because there tends to be a bit more flexibility in art subjects in terms of scheduled time. So if, for example, you have to be at a rehearsal most days at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, it's usually the case in an art subject that you can manage your timetable so that you can do that. Whereas sometimes in science subjects, you're expected to be in the lab until 5, and it's a little bit trickier. So the thing to do is, if you are interested in a subject that you know will have quite a lot of contact time, is probably to write to the director of music or the chaplain of the college that you're thinking of applying to and asking them whether they think that an organ scholarship would be manageable with let's say, an engineering degree. And I just want to make a very quick point there. Please don't be hesitant or embarrassed about writing to directors of music or chaplains, because it's absolutely fine. I know it might feel a little bit intimidating to the idea of sending an email to somebody you don't know and who you want to impress as a player or a singer, but it's absolutely fine. And especially now it's not possible to come and chat to people informally. It's really helpful if you just don't worry about asking a question that you may think is even silly. It's absolutely fine to write to people. You lose nothing by doing that.
They're generally the sort of emails we do like to receive, so please do.
Absolutely, yeah. Back on the choral side, is applying to the more prestigious college choirs inadvisable if you think you have less of a chance of getting in? Good question. I think the answer I always give to this is apply first choice to the choir you would really most like to be a member of. And part of the reason for saying that is that during the Choral Award audition process, we have, as part of this intercollegiate Choral Award scheme, a very robust system for all of the college directors of music considering the whole field of candidates. So that if a particular college thinks that a particular singer is not quite of a standard for their choir, there's that very good opportunity through that process for us to pass that application to another college where the director of music is happy to consider that person for a choral award. And so go for the choir you'd like to be in. Any other responses to that, perhaps from Will or Mark?
I'd completely agree, Owen. Set the bar high. If you want to be in a certain choir, put that as your first choice. And then you can put down, I think, up to 10 choices of college for if you want to be considered by other colleges in that sort of order. You can also tick a box, or rather not tick a box, or rather, let me be clear. There is a box which you may or may not tick if you want to be considered by even more colleges after that. So if you want to give yourself the best shot at being a choral scholar at Oxford, name 10 colleges in the order of your choice, and then make sure you're under consideration by any other college as well.
And if you feel after your first however many choices, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're really not sure what colleges you'd want to put in order after that, then just tick that box, and all the other colleges which offer scholarships for your voice will consider you as part of that intercollegiate process in September. We've also had a question, are you at an advantage of being interviewed by your first choice college if you've been offered a choral scholarship there? So there's a simple answer to that, which is that as a result of the September auditions, all that we tell you is that you're under consideration for a choral award. So you're not yet appointed to a choral scholarship. And whether you then are awarded a choral scholarship is entirely dependent on you then separately going through the normal academic application process for Oxford alongside all the other candidates. So you're not at an advantage or disadvantage. It doesn't affect your academic application to Oxford. You apply, You go through the interviews and so on, and then if you're made an offer of an academic place by a college, then it's at that point that the question of the core scholarship being confirmed is sorted out. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, either Will or Mark? Should we go back to organ scholarship questions for a bit then, please, Mark?
Well, there's an interesting question here that is relevant to both organ and choral, which is somebody was asking whether the repertoire differs from college to college. I think it might be helpful if somebody spoke about what it was that attracted them to a particular college. And I think on the whole, we would all try and say that we aim to do a varied and wide repertoire, and most colleges, if you were to look at the music for any week, you would find music from the 14th century to something written last week. But it is the case that certain directors of music do have particular areas of interest, and there are sometimes recording projects. I don't know whether, Lawrence, you would want to say anything about that?
Yes, I mean, obviously every choir will be different in some regards, reflecting personal choices of the director of music. Often directors of music, or indeed organ scholars who run choirs, will write around when they're planning a music list and ask for any particular requests from members of the choir. I think, obviously within the context of evensong, which forms the majority of what a choir does, basically every choir has a very wide range of repertoire. So at Queen's, for example, we might do anything in a week from a Tudor verse service all the way to something sort of written last Tuesday, a new commission or something like that. And then beyond evensong, concerts are great opportunities for exploring wider repertoires. So at Queen's again, Owen's particularly interested in early music, so a lot of our concerts and recordings often focus in on, Taverner and that sort of thing, early Taverner, I should say. But we've also done a disc exploring Howells and, Howells' contemporaries. So don't be put off. That sounds a bit wrong, but don't be put off by a particular director of music's interests, because the repertoire will no doubt be very wide-ranging.
Thank you very much. So we'll go back to the core questions. Specific one, do you have services outside term time, e.g. Christmas or Easter services? So the answer here is that most of the choirs will do their servicing in college within the 8-week terms, the 3 8-week terms each academic year. There are a couple of exceptions to that. So for example, Christchurch, which of course is the cathedral choir for Oxford, sings longer terms. And Mark, you might want to say, or Milo, a bit about what Magdalen does in a minute. But Chris, do you want to say what the sort of year of singing is at Christchurch?
Yeah, so the singing term tends to follow the academic term and then is extended by about 3 to 4 weeks afterwards. So for Michaelmas, which is first term, we sing up until Christmas Day, and that includes a Christmas service of Matins and Eucharist on Christmas morning. For Easter, it tends to be closer to 2 or 3 weeks after Hilary term, and then we leave for 1 to 2 weeks, and we're back for the Holy Week services, which normally will include a performance of a Passion. And then for Trinity, it's much the same, except Trinity is often the opportunity for Christchurch to do any recording projects or tours, which can also happen in the Hilary vacation. So again, you'll be singing during the academic term as usual, and then for 2 to 3 extra weeks afterwards. And then there might be additional engagements on top of that. That's generally how it works over the 3 or 4 years of the course.
Mark, is there anything you wanted to add, or Milo?
Milo might want to just talk a little bit about Magdalen, but I suspect that pretty much everywhere apart from Christchurch in Oxford has a similar pattern of continuing for a bit after the end of terms, with whether it's tours or concerts or recording projects. but certainly in Oxford, I don't think any of the rest of us are required to be here on Christmas morning. But Milo, maybe you want to say something about what happens at the end of term or beginning at either side.
Yeah, so at Magdalen, we also stay for a couple of weeks after the end of term. But what I would say is it might sound a bit annoying to have to stay on while everyone else gets to go home. But actually, those couple of weeks are quite fun because the schedule is obviously much less hectic. You've got no academic work, and you get to do, concerts and tours and things like that, which is some of the most fun stuff about choir. So I think it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Would any of the other current choral scholars like to just pick one out-of-term choir event or activity which they particularly enjoyed or struck them? Gemma?
Yeah, we went on choir tour to Poland last year in January, which was we went a week before term started in January, and we went for about a week, and that was such an amazing experience, and it was definitely worth sort of coming back early for it, and that was probably one of the most memorable things I've done. So I definitely, yeah, I wouldn't be put off by it at all.
Sarah?
So Univ Choir went on choir tour last year, but I was unable to go. But I think that's the main one. Yeah.
Yeah. Charlotte, anything else?
Well, obviously, given that I'm a first year, we unfortunately haven't had ample opportunity to go on tour. However, we did have a wonderful Christmas concert sort of series over the Christmas vac, and we all got together for I think 2 nights and did a few concerts involving some rather bizarre but wonderful traditions at Queen's, which hopefully some of you will get to experience in the future.
Thanks. So again, I'll just answer one or two very specific questions about call awards which have appeared. The first is, if you are under consideration for a certain college, do you then put that college as your first choice for the academic application? The answer is yes. So after the call awards, if you receive the message saying you're under consideration for a call award at that first choice college, then that's the college you name on your Oxford academic application. Another question, could you explain the difference between chapel choirs and college choirs and the overlap between these? So many colleges will have often a non-auditioned college choir run by the College Music Society, sometimes chorus size, sometimes chamber choir size, often conducted by an undergraduate, and that is distinct from the chapel choir. There's another meaning of college choir in the case of somewhere like the cathedral, where there are the cathedral singers who sing on for services on certain days when the cathedral choir is not singing.
And if I might just jump in there,
yeah.
There's other sort of college choirs around which are the sort of official choir of the college. For example, Somerville, we call ourselves the college choir because our format is not so religiously based, which also links into some of our repertoire choices. So as a non-denominational choir or worshipping in a non-denominational format, we get to do all sorts of things. Although we do the Bach John Passion, Macmillan Miserere, we'll also sing Italian madrigals by Maddalena Castellana, and also arrangements of works by Imogen Heap and things like that. So the nomenclature is a little bit specific here and there.
Somebody's asked, to what extent do you expect formal training for a choral scholarship? So some of those who apply for choral scholarships will have had lessons, some over quite an extended period, some in a briefer period to prepare for the application for choral scholarships. But not everybody has who successfully applies for choral awards. And in terms of other formal training, well, I think what I mentioned about the huge range of degrees of experience and types of experience that people have before they apply is important here. I don't know if Mark or Will want to chip in on this.
All I would say is, as you say, it varies enormously. I think if you are going to, I think you need to be aware of how you think your voice would fit into any group of singers, right? So if you're going to be one of 12, one of 4 altos at Magdalen, for example, or 4 tenors or 4 basses at Magdalen, we would need to have the confidence that you, as Milo says, you feel like you're playing a part, that you will be able to hold your own there. If you feel a little bit less confident about that, then maybe a choir that has more singers or would have fewer services will suit you. But formal training is definitely not a requirement. But if you have the chance, if you've never had a singing lesson and you're interested in having a go at this, you have the chance to sing to somebody locally, a local singing teacher or something like that, who can give you a few tips. That's always worth taking if you can.
I'd also just add, sorry, Will, to say briefly, I think people are often more anxious about their sight reading ability than they need be. And that we're looking in the sight reading for signs that people would be reasonably quick at working within this mechanism that the Oxford choirs work with relatively brief rehearsal in order to have the repertory for an evensong or whatever up to a decent standard. So it's that level of being able to find one's way around one's vocal part that we're looking for. But we're not looking for people who are necessarily note perfect in difficult music. And of course, when the choirs are tackling challenging repertoire, they will spend more time on it and on the learning the dots. Will, you were going to say?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Owen. I'd say that every single choir at a college in Oxford contains people who've been singing for a very long time, and also some people who haven't been singing for very long at all. Depending on the choir you're in, as Owen and Mark have hinted at, that if you've got a lot of services, sight reading is going to be quite important. But remember that a choral scholarship is an education opportunity, and whatever your standard when you arrive at Oxford, the choir will help you develop your skills both vocally and particularly with sight reading, where some people haven't had the opportunity to sing some of the challenging music that goes on within Oxford.
Somebody's asked if you don't think you'd have time or would prefer not to, are the singing lessons obligatory? Must you take up the singing lessons offered? So I think that in most choirs that with choral scholarships, the answer to that would be yes, because related to what Will's just said, actually, to develop one's solo singing through lessons, well, one's singing technique through lessons is really an important adjunct of what the choirs are aiming to do, not least educationally for the singers that are in them. But I should emphasize that in many of the choirs, the singing lesson load, if you like, is not going to cut drastically into your time, your working week. So to take the example of Queen's, the singing lesson funding will pay for roughly fortnightly lessons through the academic year, plus a couple of extra lessons if you're in the run-up, say, if you're reading music to doing your first year recital or your finals recital or doing a big solo in choir or whatever it is. But I don't know if any of the others, either students or directors of music, wanted to add to that answer.
Just at Peters, we get 2 lessons a term. So it's only 2 hours out of your term that you don't even have to do it really. I'm definitely recommending it. You learn a lot, but it's only 2 hours out of your whole term. So you can easily find time to fit that in. And I generally found it was a really nice way to spend an hour because you just thought about singing and you actually felt quite a lot more relaxed afterwards.
Should we switch to organ scholarship questions again, Mark?
So there are a number of practical questions about how the process works, which I'll try and summarize quickly. A number of people have asked about how the organ application works between Oxford and Cambridge. So you put in your application to Oxford and you put in your application to Cambridge if you wish to apply to both. Organ scholars have this luxurious privilege of being allowed to be considered by both universities on the basis that there aren't very many organists in the world, sadly, and it's important that they can be shared around. But you will have to state a preference for the university. And so if you say my first choice is Oxford or my first choice is Cambridge, it then follows your preference list within a university. So you can't say my first choice is St Cake's College, Oxford, and my second choice is, Trundle College, Cambridge. You can't do, and my third choice is St Boffin's College in Oxford. You can't mix and match between them. You have to say, here's my list in Oxford, here's my list in Cambridge, or the other way around. And that means that you do need to think a little bit carefully about that. It's not, for example, a very good idea to put down 10 colleges in Oxford, and then to put King's College, Cambridge as your first choice in a Cambridge list, because it's unlikely that the Director of Music of King's would take you as effectively his 11th choice. But maybe he would, but unlikely. So just be careful in your preference list. Think about how you could structure that, and where, as with chorals, most important is that you apply to the college that you most want to go to. Yeah, you do need to make separate applications to Oxford and Cambridge, and then astonishingly, Oxford and Cambridge do talk to each other during September, and from that we work out who has put Oxford first and Cambridge first, and who's only applied to one or the other. And then we know, when we're considering all the applicants, what the situation is. So for example, if you come to an Oxford audition, but you've already got 12 colleges on your Cambridge list and your Cambridge first choice, then we might be more likely to privilege somebody who's put Oxford first choice and put us in their first 2 or 3 on the preference list, because we stand less chance of getting you if you were Oxford second choice. So you do have to do that. And then a very quick point about the personal statement, and it might just be worth either Melissa or Lawrence talking a bit about what they talked about in their personal statement, because you do make an application just for the Organ Awards, okay? And you fill in the form and you get the chance to talk about yourself. Melissa, did you rave about your love of Messia in your personal statement?
I didn't, from what I remember, but I think my approach of it, because I applied to Somerville, which is less services, we've got the equivalent of a service called Contemplation, but I went for a more personal approach. So I talked about what I wanted to get from being an organ scholar, the social aspect of being in a choir, but also leading or just, yeah, music making within college, but then also just experience such as playing in my school services, and I think that was mostly it. That was quite a long time ago.
Thank you. Lawrence, do you have any advice to add to that?
Not really. I can't really remember what I wrote. It's about 4 years ago now. But yes, just outlining, any relevant experience that you've got would no doubt be a good idea.
Thank you.
We just have time to fit in a nice question, which is, what is your favourite anthem to sing? So the answer is as short as the name of the piece, please. But could we add it to it? What is your favourite anthem to play or conduct, so the organ scholars can join in? So let's just go around. Charlotte?
How's Gloucester?
So the Gloucester service by Howells, great. Sarah?
Finzi Low, the Full Final Sacrifice.
Milo?
I'll go for Harris, Fair is the Heaven.
Chris?
Walton's The 12.
Gemma?
I can't pick. I'm sorry.
Fine. And Melissa? You're muted, I think. Lawrence, do you want to go?
No doubt Macmillan's A New Song.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for taking part. Thank you for watching. And we hope to post this as a YouTube video in due course. The Call Awards typed Q&A continues between 3 and 5 p.m. today, 2nd of July. And as we said earlier, all the directors of music are really delighted to answer any questions that any of you have at any stage, to contact them. The details for the Call Award application process are up online now, and just to repeat that the Call Awards application form is also now online. So we'll wrap up now. Thank you all very much for taking part.